they call you an asshole.
Been called a bitch 1,000 times.
A knocked up whore. Get the F out of his effing room, you effing N-word. I've been bitten, choked, punched in the mouth. I had a guy try to kick me in my stomach while I was pregnant.
You push me past my limit, past my capacity of being able to multitask. Something's gonna get missed. And when I say something, I'm talking about your mother. I'm talking about your father. I'm talking about your husband and your wife.
They may be at breaking point, but their bosses have warned them not to speak out. They are anyway.
So we're breaking news at 6 as thousands of Providence doctors, nurses, and other workers walk off the job. It is a large...
From policymakers to frontline practitioners, we dive deep into the diverse worlds that make up our evolving medical landscape. Join us as we uncover success stories. Whether you're a seasoned professional or simply curious about the future of health, this is your gateway to the uncharted territories of modern medicine. Anas Abidrabu is your host of Uncharted Narratives podcast, Sirdiat. Today we're diving into the world of Jamie Marcellus, a transformative healthcare leader who has redefined what's possible when nursing expertise meets entrepreneurial vision. Jamie is not just a registered nurse. He's a serial entrepreneur who has successfully exited 2 healthcare companies and is now leading Novus Health into the future. With over 2 decades of experience, Jamie has consistently demonstrated how clinical expertise can drive groundbreaking business solutions. Jamie represents the new generation of healthcare leaders. He's passionate about mentoring emerging professionals and developing technologies that fundamentally improve how we connect people with care. Jamie is at the forefront of healthcare innovation, leveraging his unique blend of clinical knowledge and strategic thinking to solve complex healthcare challenges. Whether you're a healthcare professional, aspiring entrepreneur, or simply curious about transformative leadership, this conversation promises to inspire and challenge your understanding of what's possible. Welcome back to Uncharted Narratives. If you're just joining us, we're continuing our second-part conversation. Now let's continue our journey and uncover more remarkable stories and insights.
And be a participant, right?
Yeah, exactly. One of the challenges also, it was in the past before we become and make this gap between the international company and local presence. They used to have that challenge at the hospital when they request any requirement. They thought the vendor know the regulation internally and how it's worked. So most of probably that time that was a British companies where this is how we used to do it here. Okay, it's worked in England, but doesn't that mean it should work in Saudi? And that gap of misunderstanding make a lot of missed opportunity. And when we start to handle this with the local team, and that means local team that they understand the culture, they understand the rules, then the business start to grow. So this is back for your point. If you want to work in US, you need to consider this a physical.
I think it's even the case in Canada. I mean, I think maybe not as widespread, but I think if you're delivering services across multiple regions in Canada, it helps you if you have presence in those regions. So a great example for us at Novus is, I think 50 or 60% of our interactions come out of Quebec.
Uh-huh.
If we had 0 Quebec-based employees, 0 presence in Quebec, I don't know that we would be seen as positively as we are with our customers because about a third of our staff are in Quebec. We have, a significant portion that are there that understand the local culture, understand the language. Yes, it's a little bit different, but that's even true in Western Canada. Like Western Canada, Alberta, if you are looking to support an Alberta healthcare organization, they will place heavier value on somebody who is committed locally versus somebody who's from Toronto. Like that should be natural because again, all the things that we talked about in your example from Saudi, while the regulations might not be as different, culture and social experience and norms and things like that can be. And so, it's important to understand in terms of expansion, are those opportunities, where it makes sense to have that local commitments.
Makes sense. One of the things you highlighted, it's very hard in the beginning to find a product fit market. And you need to start with something reasonable and then iterate and improve. And enhance your product. So with the financial limitation and restriction which you have, how the business owner and entrepreneur, they can improve and enhance their services or product, and in the same time they facing financial challenging?
So I'm probably not the right person to ask, because most of the time I've purchased something that has a foundation, and maybe it's just not being used. So I see the opportunity within it, but I'll try my best to answer it, which is to say, I think spend time on understanding where that fit is, spend time in really distilling down the value that you can add. Like, what is it that somebody would describe as doing, or what's the benefit of your program, of your service or product or whatever it is. And sometimes it's a question of like defining that, but doing so in a way that is broadly system thinking, because you might think that it fits here, but when you really distill it down, broadly speaking, it actually has applications, something that's completely different. What do I mean by that? So an example would be our staffing business. We had a couple of organizations ago. It was a healthcare staffing business. So I think generally people would say it's a healthcare business. The result is it wasn't. It's actually an order fulfillment business and almost a logistics business, in that the product that you're shipping is nurses and allied health professionals, where you're fulfilling orders, right? Yeah. You're fulfilling orders. It happens to be healthcare, but the bigger challenges are anticipating demand, speed of deployment, communication, like all those sorts of things. And so I think once you start to understand that, yes, the healthcare side is important in terms of making sure that you're meeting regulations and you have policies and procedures and all those sorts of things. But the core of how to make the business better wasn't about making nursing better. It was about making that fulfillment experience better for both sides, right? For the nurse who is the product, as well as for the hospital or whoever was accepting the shift. And so I think, similarly, try to think through your idea of whatever you have to say, what is the broad system? Like, what is it I'm actually doing? So in that staffing business, yes, it's healthcare. We agree. But what is it? What's the core of it? And if you can understand that, I think that can open you into some of those ideas of how do you, improve upon it? How do you, grow it, deliver it, do a different job?
Your unique value proposition into the business, what you will add, and what is the things your other competitors they don't have. So to think in different way, which is make a lot of the sense. So if you want to share with us a lesson learned from what you have learned from your first two business, I think Human Care and First Health, those two company was in the beginning. So what the lessons you took with you for the third company?
I think the common thing amongst the three has been culture focus. I think building an organization where individuals, we try our best. We're not perfect. We try our best to care about one another. We try our best to care about the customer. We try our best to care about the delivery of what we're trying to do. I think if you can weave in, at least for us, that's been successful. We've been able to weave that in and help make decisions from that standpoint. I think each one is a little bit different in terms of the product mix, the market, all those sorts of things. But I think there's always learnings that you can gain along from it. And it goes back to what I said before, which is to some extent, you have to be ruthless in terms of really understanding what it is that you're delivering and paying attention. And so I'll give you a story. This isn't an organization this was an organization I worked at, but I remember a conversation with the then CEO that I reported to, and we were trying to figure out the value proposition. How do we describe ourselves to the market? And so in what ended up happening is we kept explaining, we would say, here's what we do. And it would be 15 minutes to describe what it is that we do. And then we would get to the end and they would say, oh, you're like this. And and we would say, yeah, but we do this. And so there was this one moment I remember where we were trying to figure out how do we describe it. And at the end of it, you just kind of go, they're telling you, like, we need to pay attention. They've been telling us for the last year and a half what we are. We've just been trying to explain it away. Instead, we need to own that. We need to take that and now utilize that to then expand, because that resonates with people. People understand it in that way. That's how people think about us. And so, that is our brand. We need to pay attention to what people are telling you and really start to utilize that. So I think there are those lessons that come along the way. And I think that just continues to make you better. But it's that really introspection of what are we really good at? What do people think we're good at? Because those can be two different things, right? We can think we're good at one thing, but somebody else tells us we're really good at something else. Which decision are we going to go down? Are we going to go down the one where we know or we want to be at this, or are we going to go where the customer perceives us? And there's no right or wrong answer in those situations. It's going to depend on a whole host of factors. But
many factors.
But those are the kinds of things to do.
Right.
Yeah.
So how you see the future of the healthcare sector in Canada with the new AI era from your interaction and working in the Canadian health? How our future in the healthcare will look like?
It's a great question. And if I had all the answers, I would make the right bets and reap the rewards. I think to some extent, if I think back to 99 when I graduated, a lot of the same challenges in healthcare exist today. We have it's many same things. We have shortages of human health resources, people shortages, whether that's physician shortages, whether that's nursing shortages, both. We have those. We have resource constraints. It becomes more and more difficult to deliver healthcare at same costs. It's expensive. That's true. We have access issues. Wait times that are in ERs right now are reminiscent of wait times that were in ER when I was in the ER 8+ years ago. This kind of overarching pandemic thing, which is we have to be prepared. Well, I worked and emerged during SARS. Some people may remember that time frame. They were different, but a lot of similarities. And so there's a lot of the same challenges. I think what's interesting is technology's gotten a bit better. And so some of the tools that we're using are certainly more helpful, but at its root, a lot of the same challenges that we have. On the AI side, I think AI presents this interesting opportunity, which is to say that we can now utilize it in partnership with some of the things that we do really well. Like if we can help it from a decision support, so not rely on it, but trust it at the same time. So we have to trust it and inquire and utilize it to make better decisions. I think there's huge opportunities to use it to make a lot of the things that make nursing, physicians, their jobs, the administrative aspects, the things I just want to get back to caring for patients. Like I don't like charting. I don't like doing things like that. I mean, there's a ton of, I think, solutions that are already out in the market that either people are using or can start using in those places. But I think the interesting thing is as healthcare as a system, we tend not to move quickly, right? Because we're concerned about privacy, we're concerned about data storage, we're concerned about all these sorts of things. And so I think the use of AI and use of other things within, especially the public healthcare system, which is a large portion in Canada, I think is going to lag, there will be some catch up that has to happen. Just like even with computer systems and things like that happen, right? Like I remember towards my exit, we were still on a DOS-based system. If you're familiar with that, what that is, that was like,
screen.
Yeah, like
I'm too old, like you.
This old archaic system, which was by and large by 2000, a thing of the past. We were still using it because that big system change was different. Now, I'm not saying that they haven't upgraded since then. I'm sure they have. I'm sure the hospital is doing.
They intend slower than other, and just what is accepted, and also there is a lot of regulation and requirement to do before
other risk tolerance and things like that, right?
But you mentioned again, it's been 25 years. Let's take the shortage example. It's not the technology. Shortage example is the same challenge. Canada, they have it before 25 years. And there's a lot of technology. They try to intend to help the shortage and find a different solution, not to replace the human, but at least to decrease the burden on the kind of stuff. Is Canada adapt with the technology as fast as the technology evolve, or still Canada is slower than the evolve and enhancement in the technology?
I'm not sure. I mean, I think if you think of like human health shortage as an example of a concern, I don't know that technology solves it all. It probably solves, if I had to guess, maybe 10%. Certainly not 50. some areas of efficiency, better matching, like there's just different things that can be utilized, grouping of patients, some things. But I think at the end of it, one of the big challenges is I think we haven't done a good job societally of making healthcare interesting for individuals to want to go into, right? Like I think nursing as an example, we talk about the fact that salaries haven't risen to the same degree. If I want to make a living, have, a family or, whatever that means to that individual, I'm going to expect that based on the level of education that I'm doing, the debt that I'm going to take on to complete that education, I'm going to expect a certain level of pay. And my belief is that there's probably easier pathways to comfort and wealth than nursing. And so, that means that the nurses that are going through nursing are ultra committed and want to be there. But if you want to solve shortage, you have to start expanding your thinking in terms of, does there have to be different pay structures? Why do we do 12-hour shifts? Because we've always done 12-hour shifts. Is that really because they're easy to schedule? Is that the reason why? Because 12-hour shifts as a lifestyle for families, for lots of people, doesn't really work, right? When you add in commute, that's a long period of time to be away. And so can we think about how do we shape the work to be different for this generation or the next generation to make it more interesting and more appealing, and maybe using technology and learning and all those sorts of things. So I think it's not just as simple as saying, well, technology will solve it. I agree it's important and it'll solve part of it, but I think the vast majority has to be really almost like a system level change in terms of how do we value, how do we pay, how do we think about work, how do we structure it differently, how do we organize work in different ways to make it more interesting, more appealing, all of those sorts of things. Maybe you give access to nursing education for free. I don't know. Like, is that a bad idea? Is that a good investment by the government to grow it? I mean, maybe.
I was planning to ask you. So now you are not working in the hospital and you are out of the practice. But when we start with the value you gain from the mentoring from your leaders and how they help you to evolve in the career. And I believe the value you added for their business a lot more than what you get it for you. So you pay them back in return by improve the business. So from that perspective, when you mentioned right now, you have a free training. How you see those nurses where they believe I need to go out and see someone or hire someone to mentor me, how to change my mindset, how to do this and that, because some of the skill set is not available with my manager, or sometimes the shortage, I don't have that luxury. So I don't want to rely on excuse. I want to find a solution. But when I go out, this is cost. I cannot cover that cost.
Yep.
So,
I think there are times when, that those kinds of services, those kinds of supports are absolutely valuable. But I think you can also do a lot on your own. I think the challenge is it's hard work. It's hard work in addition to the fact that you're already doing work. And so you have to put in that effort. You have to be ruthless in sort of your self introspection. You have to invest in, reading books and listening to podcasts and, participating. And it takes time and it's hard and you have to be consistent. And just like anything, you can't do it once and expect that it's going to be, life-changing. You have to build it into a habit and continue to do that. And so I think you can do a lot of those things. And then where it makes sense, add in that help in addition. But they're absolutely valuable. Those kinds of things are beneficial. I think things like you do, they're beneficial. But I think you can also complement those with a lot of your own self-driven, things and these are things that we don't necessarily learn as part of nursing school, is how to manage careers and, the kinds of things to do. There's tons of great books. And I would say, that's been a consistent thing for me. And I would encourage others because generally speaking, if you want to go to a library, it's basically free. At worst, it's a little bit of cost if you're buying your own books and things like that, but you can just start reading and on a wide range of topics. Like if business is interesting to you, don't just focus on business healthcare, read some of the great business stories of, how a founder did, great biographies, lessons in history, learn about like the interesting and new things. Like I, over the holidays, read a book, believe it or not, I think it's called The History of Debt, which sounds about as exciting as the title, but it was super fascinating to understand how this concept of debt all came about, which then benefits those, just as an example. There's so much information. And I think this is what I tell my kids. They live in a world where there is so much information. And now you have things like ChatGPT to help you, what is it? It's Google's like large, where you can take research papers and basically create a podcast out of them very simply. I can't think of the name of it off the top of my head, but like there are these tools that make accessing information that much easier. We used to have to physically go to a library and look up and figure out where something was based on where it should be in the library.
Talking about ML notebook.
If I can tell you the name.
This is something you can put it and they will summarize it for you and put it in the
notebook LM.
Yeah, notebook.
So you can drop it's a great tool because you can drop huge pieces of text, studies, whatever it is, and say, make me a podcast that explains all the finer points of it in a very amazing conversation. The point of all that is to say that right now you can pretty much, if you want to figure out how to make a career change or learn how to write a resume or be better at LinkedIn or whatever it is, go on YouTube, create the right search criteria, and you will find tremendous resources that you can spend that, and sorry to sound like the old guy in the room, but in my day just didn't exist. We had to do all that sort of stuff. And so I did that a lot through books, but I would say use both. We're in this amazing time where there's all this information.
So to recap, if you cannot afford to buy a mentor or coach, there's no excuse. The technology is there, and you can build your own self-write book. Go and spend more time with podcast networking and educate yourself. And
I think you can move even beyond just paid mentor and find a mentor. Right? Like, I think I was fortunate to have somebody. It didn't just happen naturally. I had to engage in a conversation. It's a hard conversation because you might be rejected and like all those things. But what's the worst that can happen if you ask? They say no.
Here, there's a misconception. A mentor not necessarily every time to be hired. Sometimes they are happy to support you without any financial incentive. So
totally.
And those who knows you and they are willing to give you more than anyone to hire them.
Definitely.
They don't know exactly, and they don't know your skill set or your unique value, like someone closer from you. In the past, before that become as a trend, now a buzzword, that person, one of the family, who is my mentor or my coach, one of the my family.
And it doesn't even have to be that big formal structure, right? Like, I think you can just ask a colleague a question. Hey, how did you do this? And again, what's the risk? They tell you, I'm not going to tell you. Okay. They're not going to tell you. Move on to the next person. Ask the same question. Like at the end of it, again, if you're asking in a genuine way, chances are you'll get the answer that you're looking for, or at least this sort of guidance just by merely asking.
Human nature, they like to support other, and we
like to help
more
people.
Valuable when someone asks them.
We thrive in community, right? Humans thrive in community, in sort of tribes, if you will. And so nursing is a big tribe. I think there are many, many nurses at varying degrees who will give assistance to in the form of, answering a question or some guidance or a recommendation or whatever it is. It's very, very simple.
So what is your one piece of advice for a new generation or anyone looking for career transition or enhancement or looking for leadership within the hospital? What is your piece of advice?
I spoke about this, I think today or yesterday, which is prepare. So I think don't underestimate the skills you have. You have immense skills. You need to define what those are and reframe those to some extent to apply not to what you're doing today, but to that role that you're interested in. So if that's a leadership role, take some of the leadership skills that you absolutely have doing what you're doing and translate that and position that. And then also work to fill in gaps. So work to educate yourself, get other experiences, volunteers on parts of teams. You know, in hospitals, there are committees oftentimes. I presume there was when I was, there. I volunteered for almost every committee I could early on to get different experiences and also to demonstrate that you are committed, that you want to be engaged, that you want to do all those sorts of things. I think the idea of just saying, oh, I applied and I didn't get the job. Okay, you didn't. So now what are you going to do about it, right? Like, why didn't you get it? And so I think in some instances you apply and you won't be successful. Again, use that as a learning opportunity introspectively to say, what did I learn? What can I do differently? What can I do in the interim? What are they really telling me? So what are they telling me is the reason why it was a no? Is that because I didn't have the experience? Is that because I didn't have that? Well, how do I get the experience? I can't exactly go out and get the experience without a job. So I need to create pseudo experience, right? Either volunteer, participate, whatever it may be. Those are the things I think that individuals can do,
which is
and do really well.
Very valuable. And I
it's work though.
Equal your preparation. When you are prepared, you know what's your next move, and based on that, you can see how your future look like and what you need, a sort of resource in order to help you to do that. So, Jamie, how the audience they can connect with you? Where's the best place they can find you?
Probably LinkedIn is great. So if you go to, and maybe you'll have a link, but just my full name. If you search me, if you find me, connect with me, have a conversation. I, again, want to help individuals. So, if you're looking to answer a question, we'll jump on a call if it's too complicated to answer in a quick note, but sometimes we can just answer in a quick note. That's how we met, right?
I can guarantee that. Thank you, Jamie, for your time, and it was a pleasure having you. I'm looking forward to see you more successful and your impact lasts in Canada. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
All right, thanks.
If this episode sparked something in you, here's how you can keep our mission alive. Subscribe to Uncharted Narratives Surdiyat. Leave us a 5-star review. It helps more amazing people discover our stories. Share an episode that moved you with a colleague or friend. Connect with me on LinkedIn and join our healthcare innovation community. Together, we're not just telling stories. Until next time, stay curious, stay passionate, and keep pushing the boundaries of what's possible in healthcare. See you in the next episode of Uncharted Narratives Surdiyat.